the adults, so not one of those youngsters. And then Kuhuma Pride obviously used to be 5 adult lionesses, 2 young sort of year-old lionesses and 1 young male. History doesn't relate what happened to the young male or where he is at the moment or where the rest of the pride is. I don't know where they are. But one of the adult lionesses was killed by the 5 Birmingham males, and we really don't know why. It's very sad, but it just seems to be what happens. I think we'll have quite a long discussion on those lions if you'd like to. Contino John, your question is basically, was the fact that the Birmingham coalition of 5 is distantly related to the Matimbas action? I don't believe so. I think that's perfectly normal. I think it's perfectly within the realm of what happens with lions, because, you know, they don't, often male lions won't disperse that far from their natal pride. And so it's not unusual for them to come into contact with lions that are related to them, cousins or uncles or something like that. So I don't think that's playing a part in it. And just to keep you informed, the lioness was actually moved by the Kruger National Park. They come in, there's an extensive program to check on the status of TB, bovine tuberculosis, in the lions and the buffalo of this area. And so as soon as a lion is killed by whatever means, they will go and test them to see if TB is there, what the extent of the disease is, what effect it's had on the body, and that sort of thing. So the lioness is no longer there. She's probably in Skukuza now, having an autopsy. You've asked how long have the Matimbas been in power? I actually don't know, to be honest. I think it's about 4 years now. Certainly, I have a 2011 map, thank you Louise, that indicates the Matimbas being dominant in this area where we are now. I think it is about 4 years. So they took over probably when they were about 6, quite young really. But there were 5 of them to start with, just like the Birmingham boys. In fact, I think there were 6. There may have even been 6. But there are only 2 in this area now. Right, we just got the last dribbles of golden light going down there. Enjoy some peace and quiet after a very hectic afternoon. It is a beautiful shot of the sun leaving its last sort of liquid gold on the horizon. And I'll just tell you, it's always a good idea to do this. I heard some elephants just around here, and so I'm just going to have a quick listen and see if we can't hear them. And there goes the magnificent African sun. That seems to very seldom disappoint. So while much of this afternoon has been filled with a sadness and a bit of a disappointment, it's really nice that we can have such a magnificent sunset and sunrise just about every day. We also had a beautiful sighting of those wild dogs early on this afternoon, when I managed to get Bryan and I stuck in the middle of the dog sighting. So not all bad news. Right, let's press on. I heard the elephants somewhere around in there, and so we're going to head on in there and see if we can't just spend a little bit of time with them before it gets too dark. And as you can see, this sort of late winter temperature is very comfortable. I'm in my shirt sleeves, in my filthy shirt sleeves. Chillier down here. got an update on where the Nkuhuma Pride is, that would be very interesting. I suspect they're probably either headed into Kruger or north into the Manyeleti, but I'm not sure. But I think those Birmingham boys are making a serious play now for the Matimba territory. Just quickly pop in at the Hyena Den too to see if there's anything there. Shown in Pittsburgh, well, I'm not laughing at your question, I'm laughing slightly at the other one, which is a good one. Okay, nothing going on at the Hyena Den here. Sharon, you'd like to know, do wild dogs just eat meat or do they crunch through bones? They absolutely crunch through bones if they can, and especially in the small animals, even impala, they will eat everything. From the horns to the hooves. In fact, they'll probably leave the horns out, but they eat certainly the skull and all the bones. So they've got very strong jaws, but obviously something like a buffalo, which they won't kill, because they're not big enough, or maybe even a big wildebeest. The big bones, they won't be able to get their jaws in. They're certainly not nearly as jaw powerful as hyenas are, for example. And then, Sandy, a question about Steenbok, and you say, what is the population of Steenbok? They seem to be eaten a lot, but we don't seem to see many of them. Very difficult to gauge the population of Steenbok, and that's because when the population censuses are done, they're done from the air. And obviously small things like Steenbok are not very easy to see, but you do see them. Very healthy population of Steenbok, and what you find is, because they're so small, we don't see them that much, and they don't make herds, precisely so that they can stay hidden. I'm just going to go up here. And so, Sandy, they are in just about every little, they like to be in the sort of ridge-crest areas, not so much the drainage lines. So areas like around that Hyena Den or around here, you'll always find a pair of Steenbok staying in sort of visual contact with each other. And they're quite a few of them. And they do tend to get smacked quite a lot, poor things, especially by Shadow, that wonderful female leopard who we share so much time with. She tends to make a real dent on the Steenbok population. Just on the wild dogs and talking about them eating bones and what they're able to eat and what they're not able to eat. Ruth from Costa Rica, lovely to hear from you, nice to hear from Central America. You want to know what are the biggest animals a wild dog can take down? On its own, not very big, but in a big pack, they'll take down adult wildebeest. That's probably about the size limit. I think there are one or two records, perhaps, of them taking down young buffalo or buffalo cows, and I think that would be the size limit. There may be a record of them taking down giraffe, but I haven't heard of it. So I think big wildebeest, big zebra is probably about the size limit for a big pack. That pack of 3 that we had, I would say impala is probably about the size limit for them. Checking for tracks. Nothing particularly leaps out at me. slightly a personal inquiry from Calgary, from Gail. Thank you, Gail, for your question. You say you saw an interview with me on television on a program called 50/50, and I was speaking two languages, English and another one. And the other language is a beautiful language, South African language called isiZulu. And many people have heard of the AbakwaZulu, or the Zulu people. Their most famous sort of historical moment being the inflicting the greatest imperial defeat on Britain in 1879 at the Battle of Isandlwana, and it's a wonderful story. Anyway, that's for another time. You want to know what language I was speaking, so it's a language called isiZulu. Why I was speaking in two languages? Two reasons. Firstly, my Zulu is not very good, so I do need to intersperse it with English sometimes. And secondly, that 50/50 is one of the longest running shows in South African history, and 50/50 used to mean, in the bad old days, it used to mean 50% English, 50% Afrikaans, because those were the two official languages of South Africa during apartheid. Now obviously that is no longer the case, and we have 11 official languages in South Africa, and so 50/50 being on a multilingual channel has to intersperse different languages from around the country, and that's why we did that interview in Zulu. Very nice question. Most people in South Africa now, you have to learn English as the first language, and then you have to learn another African language, and that can be Afrikaans, it can be Zulu, Xhosa, Sepedi, Sesotho, Xitsonga, Shivenda, Sindebele and Siswati, any of those languages, and I think you may even be able to squeeze in French because of Francophone Africa, and maybe even Portuguese because of Portuguese Africa. So we have to do two languages, English and another African one. And in the old days when I was at school, basically my school years ended with apartheid. We had to learn Afrikaans, so I had to do that, but I also chose to do Zulu, and I maintain that it was one of the cleverest decisions I ever made. It certainly helped me learn to speak a bit of Shangaan, which I speak around here as well, and it definitely opens doors where previously there were obviously enormous barriers in South Africa because of our turbulent history. Thanks, Gail. Seem to be seeing any of these elephants anywhere. There we are, you can hear them. Either that or it's the car rattling, which is quite possible today. I thought I heard the breaking of branches. You hear anything, Brian?
I thought I did as well.
They're just around here. I think there's another road here, so we won't take Wendy too far off road. I think we'll keep her on the road. Pop round the corner here. I mean, the one real advantage of not having any greenery on the trees, of course, is that you can see miles into the bush, where normally in summer we wouldn't be able to at all. While we go around to try and find these elephants, Dan, you want to know what was more embarrassing, being towed by Jamie or having thorns in my nether regions today? I think the thorns were infinitely worse. I was quite honoured to be towed by Jamie. You know, I'm a modern man. I try not to be emasculated by such things, especially if she did such a damn fine job. She was also under the car with me. In fact, she knew far more about what was going on under the car than I did. Oh, that's a nice smell. Very sweet smell in the air. You know what it smells like to me is the first flowers of a knobthorn tree. I can't see any knobthorn with flowers on it. That is a knobthorn that Brian's showing you now. Sorry, I thought you were showing a knobthorn. That's a knobthorn. But I can't smell any flowers on it. Or see any flowers. It is lovely, eh? Beautiful, sweet smell in the air. Very unwintery smell. Lovely. The knobthorns do have a very subtle, lovely, sweet scent when they flower, but this one doesn't have any flowers on it yet. Very nice. That question from Dan is quite an interesting one, you know. So often when I was driving guests, we had a number of female rangers at the lodges, and quite against stereotype, they're a bit like Jamie, who's, you know, she's a slight girl, she's not a big butch masculine woman, and people would say, but how can she manage to do this job, this manly job? And then I'd do something like this. If you watch my steering wheel here, I do it with one hand like I'm doing that, and say, well, it's really not that hard to drive a Land Rover these days, and then point out that although Jamie and her ilk are slight of frame, they've passed all the same tests that the men have had to do. They've had to work just as hard. In fact, they've had to work much harder because they've had to overcome various sort of sexist attitudes to women being game rangers. And the other thing I used to say is that I think they make excellent rangers because they're not fueled by testosterone like men are. So they're much more sensitive with animals. And they don't tend to take chances which would endanger animals or other people. So it's really quite nice to have Jamie on board. And if I have to be pulled by her every so often, well, you know, at least she's not going to lord it over me like Brent Leo Smith might, for example. There is a zebra, not an elephant. Hello, zebra. Don't worry, Wendy hasn't broken down, I've just turned her off. Just try and have a look at them as they go through the sort of bush. And the interesting thing about zebra stripes, people will tell you all sorts of weird and wonderful, newfangled, crazy stories about why they've got stripes and why they don't. But if you see them walk through this kind of bush in this kind of light, this is when their major predators are starting to get moving. That's the lions. It starts to play tricks with your eyes. Now, naturally, these zebra are not moving at all. Oi! No, they're not moving. But what they do, the stripes start to play tricks with your eyes, and if you don't see in the same detail as we do, which lions don't, they see contrast much better than us, but not the same level of detail. And I think that this, there we can hear the elephants now. I should be able to find them now. Anyway, if you don't see in detail like we do, I think it must be very confusing to look at zebra stripes as they walk through the bush. Not elephant stripes, Brian. Okay, I can hear the elephants off to my right-hand side. So we'll see if we can't just get a quick glimpse before we have to hand you over to the highlights reel. It will be quite short today. They're in here somewhere. There's a little link road that goes around here. So far Wendy is mobile. Lots of evidence of buffalo bulls around here, bits of dung and tracks. They'll come out in the evening like this and start to graze across the clearings. Balas. That's a very interesting question. On the subject of Wendy and cars and why we choose the vehicles that we do in the bush, Joel, you want to know why don't we use an automatic rather than a manual or stick shift? Joel, there are a number of good reasons for it. Firstly, as you've seen, we've had to fix this thing today out here, and it's extremely difficult to do that with an automatic because they're a lot more complicated in the gearbox. And secondly, because we drive off-road a lot and in and around places like, the drainage lines, we need to have extra control of the gears. And on some of the very, very new 4x4s with electronic traction control and that sort of thing, the computers can do as well as we can, but not in these conditions. They tend to break, the electronics break down very quickly in these conditions, and so we far prefer to have a manual like this, which we can select the gears properly, and it's much easier. The simpler the vehicle out here in the bush, the better it is. Alarm calling here. A couple of birds. I'm just going to stop here and look at these zebras and see if I can't hear the elephants again. And I'll answer a question from Jamie about crocodiles. You say you're a huge crocodile fan. And do we get them in the reserve? We do get them in the reserve, but not around this particular area. They like the bigger dams and the rivers. That tends to be a better place for them to live. And the crocodiles, so that we've got the sand. Sorry. Oh, I see. Okay, and Jamie, you wanted to know if the crocodiles here were freshwater or saltwater. Well, they're absolutely freshwater crocodiles. No saltwater here. Jamie, we're about, as the crow flies, 200 kilometers from the sea at the closest point. So we're a long way from any saltwater. So they're definitely freshwater crocodiles. Although some freshwater crocodiles can survive in the salt if they have to. Lots of alarm calling from drongos around here. And that zebra is definitely looking at something, but his mate to the right is totally disinterested. Look at the elephant. Elephants are just shouting further forward, so I think we'll carry on and see if we can't get a quick glimpse. Here we go. Wonderful to be out of the workshop and in the bush. The elephants are calling just down here. I don't think we'll pick them up on the microphone. Some upheaval there. Up ahead, moving off towards the clearings for the night, so they can hopefully avoid the attentions of any predators. Oh, these elephants. I'm loath to go blasting off-road on Wendy at the moment. Just stop and have a listen here. So they are. In fact, there are lots. There's one there. Can you see that one, Brian?
Okay.
And there are lots in front of us, probably on quarantine. We'll just have a quick look at that one there, and then we'll move towards the ones that I can hear, I think, on quarantine clearings, which is not far from here at all. Sorry, it's just getting a little bit nippy. Put my jersey on over me besmirched skin. So that's the one that was calling, or certainly one of them that was calling earlier. Alright, let's just nip forward a bit quickly before we have to leave you and see if we can't find the other two. So there he is, as you can see, beautifully disguised in the grey vegetation, because he is, of course, grey. Up here, it sounded like quarantine clearings. I think I'm just going to bomb off road straight towards them, but because it's clear, we should be okay. Not if you see an elephant, Brian. Now I remember yesterday, I don't know if you were with us yesterday afternoon, but we spent a long time with a couple of herds of elephants with some big bulls, and those bulls will cause quite a lot of upheaval. So maybe that's why there's so much noise. And find these elephants. I'm just going to answer a few more questions on the lions. I don't know where these elephants are. Marissa, you want to know, you missed Brent's introduction, and you want to know, was the lioness killed after or before they killed the buffalo? They were on a buffalo carcass that the Birmingham guys stole from them. I would imagine afterwards, probably at the kill, but I'm not sure. I don't know that anyone saw it actually happening. They were shouting, I thought, from right here. Further towards the water, it's possible. Lovely smell of the potato bush. It's always so full of memory for me. Talking about the death of that lioness, Blair in British Columbia, you know, you've said that it seems counterintuitive and counterproductive for them to be killing a lioness. I couldn't agree more. And like I say, it's abhorrent behavior, but I have seen it before. And so I don't know why they do it, Blair. Junior should actually absolutely be the first target. But I really don't know why on earth they would kill a lioness. You're right, they should be looking to try and mate rather than kill lionesses, so who knows? It really is bizarre. You can only think that these elephants were perhaps at the water here. See one? Bryan spotted them. Lots of them. Beautiful elephants here. So Lois, while we get into this little elephant sighting where they've been shouting at each other very kindly for us so that we knew they were here, you want to know, you say, surely with all of the efforts that humans make, or what impact does the fact that lions kill each other have on the efforts of humans to save lions as much as we are? Lois, it doesn't have a huge impact. They don't, lions, you say the systematic way that lions kill each other. They don't kill each other in a systematic way normally. It's perfectly normal for them to do some sort of killing when territories get taken over and that sort of thing. It is abnormal for them to start killing lionesses, certainly males, and why they have in this case I really don't know, but it's not common. And so I think lions do kill other lions, but certainly not at a greater rate that we're trying to save them. They're far more threatened by things like habitat loss and that sort of thing. Lovely elephants just having a drink here in the fresh water, and some young bulls down in the mud. Beautiful herd. Beautiful, peaceful evening. You probably saw the lights as we came down of Vuyatela Lodge, just twinkling gently in the lovely dusk light. Beautiful time of the day. Water and have a drink of that, and that's quite interesting. I'm not sure why they did that, but they certainly like to play around in the mud, probably a bit more than the herd does, which is a bit more businesslike. They have their drink and they move on. Let's turn a little bit of light onto them. Comes another one. See that fellow coming up. He's obviously had enough of mucking around in the mud, and now he wants a bit of a cleaner drink. You get a picture of the two bulls, two youngsters there, just sort of feeling each other out, smelling, and they've clearly been horsing around. If an elephant can horse, I'm not sure if an elephant can horse around. They've been elephanting around down in the drainage line, and they're still, you can see they're still doing it. That's quite sweet. Just like, exactly like humans. Young males just testing their strength against each other. A little bit of bullying. Oops. Nothing too serious. Bit of knobthorn in the bottom. Totally typical behaviour, of course. And it all just sets out. There's not so much a hierarchy, but there absolutely is a dominance display that gets done just exactly like with humans and with most other or a lot of other mammal species. The young males test themselves against each other continually. African scops owl calling off to the left. These elephants will just eventually wander off into the bush. Some of them will doze during the night, others will just keep feeding. Some of the youngsters may lie down. They do sometimes lie down to sleep. And others just will sleep standing up. And sometimes they lean against termite mounds, which is quite sweet. Difficult for an elephant to lie down for any length of time because their organs are so heavy that they tend to crush, sort of way down on them, and unless they're sort of in the right place, so i.e. standing up, right way up, they tend to be quite adversely affected. Although, that said, I heard a wonderful story once from a fellow I used to work with. He found an elephant, a big bull, lying on the ground, and he and the ranger went up to this bull and thought, well, you know, if he's dead, I'll have to report him. And as he sort of kicked the elephant in the backside, the 6-ton behemoth stood up very suddenly. He'd just been having a little doze to himself, so the ranger ran away at a great speed. It has been an interesting afternoon. We started off pretty well, I feel. We had some lovely wild dogs. Obviously, it didn't end that well for Bryan and I. After that, the car broke, and then you had the sad news of the demise of one of the Nkuhuma pride lionesses. And I think over the next little while we're going to be seeing some very strange lion dynamics, and it's going to probably give us more questions than it is answers. And the textbooks don't talk about males killing females too often, and it is an abnormal thing, and it will be interesting to see what happens as we go forward from there. I must thank you very much for your patience. We had a dreadful morning technically, and we had an equally dreadful morning, not so much technically but mechanically, this afternoon. Eugene did an incredible job in getting our signal back up and running, and then Brent and I managed to break the cars, which was not ideal. So tomorrow morning I suspect we'll probably just have old Wendy. Jiga's not in a good way, being hospitalized. So a big thank you to you all for your questions. Thank you for hanging around when you did, and thank you for your comments. We do appreciate them, and we really appreciate those of you who've hung around and waited to see if we'd come back. Thank you to you. Big thank you to Tara and her patience in the final control. And a big thank you to Bryan on camera, to Brent and Andrew, who have had a difficult afternoon. But mostly thank you to all of you. It's a beautiful evening, and I'm going to go and enjoy it now and have a bit of a relax, and we will see you tomorrow morning for the dawn safari. I'm not sure who's going to drive you then, but it'll be one of the three of us, Brent, Jamie or I. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the morning. Bye-bye.